most of us regard as immoral.
Country, that you can see a lot of these countries that are my auditor of fabric mills told me that they had gone to Bangladesh. He said to me, do you know how many factories had a wait?
Today, we will be talking about a capitalism. First, we will define its definition. Second is the captains of capitalism. Third, features of capitalism. Fourth, advantages of capitalism. Fifth, disadvantages of capitalism. So what comes in your mind when you hear the word capitalism? How will you define capitalism? So capitalism, it is an economic system and mode of production in which trade, industries, and the means of production are entirely privately owned and operated for profit. Capitalism or a capitalist economy is referred to as economic system where the factors of production such as capital goods, labor, natural resources, and entrepreneurship are controlled and regulated by private businesses. So before we proceed today discussion of capitalism, I will introduce you first the three captains of capitalism. The captains of capitalism. First is Andrew. Second is J.P. Morgan. Lastly, John D. Rockefeller. Who are these persons? So, first, Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie, born to a poor Scottish family, he and his family immigrated to the US when he was 13. He built his fortune by investing in the steel industry and became the owner of Carnegie Steel Company, which by 1889 was the largest steel company in the world. Andrew Carnegie served as a great example of an American rags to riches story. Despite some criticism of some workers at Carnegie Steel were treated, Carnegie himself was extremely active in terms of philanthropy. In his efforts to contribute to society, he established the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, the New York Public Library, and a college that would become part of Carnegie Mellon University. Next is J.P. Morgan, known to be John Pierpont Morgan, was a financier from a wealthy family and is considered by many to have been among the robber barons during America's Gilded Age. At face value, Morgan contributed greatly to American industry. He invested in Thomas Edison and the Edison Electricity Company, helped to create General Electric and International Harvester, formed J.P. Morgan and Company, and gained control of half of the country railroad millage. He also created the first billion-dollar company, U.S. Steel. At one point in his life, he was a board member of as many as 48 corporations. Lastly, John D. Rockefeller. John D. is born in 1837. He became one of the richest men in the world as the founder of the Standard Oil Company. In 2018 dollars, Rockefeller net worth is said to eclipse $400 billion, nearly 3 times the 2018 estimated net worth of Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com, and the wealthiest individual in the world. Standard Oil dominated the oil industry, controlling roughly 90% of the refineries and pipelines in the United States by the early part of the 1880s. Capitalism is an economic system based on 3 things. First is wage labor. Second is private ownership. Third is production for exchange and profit. Wage labor is the economic relationship between a worker and an employer where the worker sells their labor under a formal or informal employment contract. This transaction usually occur in labor market where wages are market determined. In exchange for the wage paid, the work product generally becomes the undifferentiated property of the employer, except for special cases such as the vesting of intellectual property. Patents in United States where patients' rights are usually vested in the original personal inventor. A wage laborer is a person whose primary means of income is from the selling of his or her labor in this way. In modern market economies such as those of the OECD countries, it is currently the most common form of work arrangement. Second is private ownership, the fact of being owned by a private individual or organization rather than by the state of a public body. Next, third is the production of exchange and profit. Production involves the creation of goods and services by using scarce resources. Producers must exchange the income they earn from the scarce resources they need to enable them to produce. Therefore, both parties, producers and consumers, must exchange something they have for something others want. What are the features of capitalism? Features of capitalism. First, private property. This is one of the most important characteristics of capitalism, where private properties like factories, machines, and equipment can be owned by private individuals or companies. For example, during the Industrial Revolution, entrepreneurship began to use their wealth to establish privately owned factories, miners, and milk. Next, freedom of enterprise. Under this system, every individual has the right to make their own economic decision without any interference. This is applicable to both consumers and producers. Next, profit motive or profit as K motive. The motive of earning profit is one of the most important drivers of a capitalist economy. In this system, all the companies are looking to produce and sell their products to consumers to earn maximum profit. Competition. There is extreme competition between capitalists. Demand is artificially increased and supply is decreased. It is another central principle of laissez-faire capitalism. Under mercantilism, the government controlled the means of production and therefore there was little to no competition. Next, price mechanism. The price of a commodity is determined not by the cost of production but by the law of demand and supply. Under this system, the demand and supply in the market will determine the production level and correspondingly the price set for the products without any kind of involvement from the government. Government interference. There is no government interference in the daily activities of the business. In a capitalist economy, there is no government interference in the daily activities of the business. The consumers and producers are free to make their own decision regarding any product or services. Free trade. In this system, the low tariff barriers exist that promote international trade. This lack competition. There is no governmental control over the forces of production, distribution, and exchange. It is controlled by the forces operating in the market. This laissez-faire competition is also referred to as free market capitalism or a market capitalism. Simply put, laissez-faire translates to leave us alone, meaning the government should remain out of the economy and instead allow individuals to freely carry out their own economic affairs. Historically, laissez-faire capitalism was most common during the 18th and 19th century in the time frame of the Industrial Revolution. Responsible capitalism. It is essentially a free market economy, but with a degree of government regulation to avoid the excess and inequalities of the capitalism. Free, free markets, but also a social welfare net, more reflective of European economies with private markets but strong government interventions. Lastly, turbo capitalism refers to an regulated form of capitalism with financial deregulation, privatization, and lower tax on high earner. Free market capitalism with little government regulation. Let's now proceed to advantages of capitalism. What are the advantages and disadvantages of capitalism? Advantages. First, more efficiency in the capitalist economy. There is more efficiency in the capitalist economy as the products are produced according to the demand of the consumer. Second is less intervention from the government. There is less intervention from the government or a bureaucratic interference. Third is better scope for innovation. There is better scope for innovation as companies look to obtain a major part of the market with their offerings. Fourth, discourages any form of discrimination. It discourages any form of discrimination so that the trade can take place between two parties without any barrier. We will now proceed to disadvantages of capitalism. First, leads to inequality. Capitalism leads to inequalities in income. Second, monopoly over workers and consumers. In capitalism, firms can get monopoly over workers and consumers. Last, high profit earning motive. A high profit earning motive of a capitalist economy is to use resources in such a way that it leads to environmental problems by destroying the natural balance. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for watching. Bye. See you on my next vlog.